serious, but one issue that we've been looking closely at on the international front has got to do with the Russia-Ukraine crisis. The latest is that refugees are crossing into neighboring countries along the Ukrainian border, including Ghanaians as well. But how is the EU actually preparing to receive this? Fortunately, we've been joined by Thomas Sparrow, who's with our partners DW. Thomas, so first of all, tell us, how is EU preparing to receive these refugees?
So there are preparations in two levels. So obviously at the wider EU level, there are discussions in particular among the different interior ministers to see how the EU as a whole, as a group, can prepare for the arrival of people fleeing from the conflict in Ukraine. In particular, what kind of regulations can be put in place. We've heard from different interior ministers in this regard that the EU will accept refugees coming from Ukraine, and they will try and do that in an unbureaucratic way. Then the second level is how different countries are preparing themselves to deal with the arrival of people fleeing from the war. In particular, some of Ukraine's neighboring countries, some of the EU countries closer to the conflict zone, are those that are being most affected now by the arrival of people. So in particular Poland, but also Romania and Slovakia. And there are discussions as to how those particular countries can also prepare and can be helped from other parts of the European Union that are much farther away from the conflict altogether, but that could also end up receiving people who leave Ukraine in this particularly difficult moment.
And finding out really, how are people reacting to this new arrivals?
In Germany, for example, a recent poll stated that over 70% were in favor of welcoming those refugees coming to Germany, and you do see a sign of unity within the European Union, an unusual sign of unity when it comes to receiving people fleeing from this conflict, even in countries where you previously saw some skepticism towards the arrival of refugees. You're seeing those messages of support when it comes to helping Ukrainians. For example, Poland, a specific country here that has received most of the people leaving Ukraine. So in general, there is a sense of support, but there's also some concern, especially among analysts, that could shift, especially when numbers continue to grow, because in previous circumstances, like for example, the refugee crisis in 2015 and 16, you also saw at the beginning that wave of support, but it then shifted as numbers continued to grow. So there are people who are warning that this public support could shift as time progresses.
Focus on Germany itself. How many people are expected, and what are the authorities doing about it?
Well, Germany is preparing. At least they want to do it in a better way than 2015 and 16, especially in the first few months. We've already had numbers of refugees arriving here in Germany. Now the numbers are comparatively small if you look at other countries, so only around 2,000, but they're also growing day by day. In particular, they're arriving in the border region between Germany and Poland, so in the eastern part of the country. But here in Berlin, the first families have also arrived. The border regions are preparing, or at least that's what they said last week, for more than 10,000 arrivals, and they're also setting up reception centers and other mechanisms to try and help them. From a German perspective, just as from the EU perspective, it has been clear that Germany is going to welcome those people fleeing from the war. That's what we've heard clearly from the German government under Chancellor Olaf Scholz.
Focus on the reports that we're receiving of discrimination against Africans in Ukraine who are also trying to flee. Can you tell us more about the situation?
There have been complaints of discrimination and racism against Africans and other foreigners who, as well as Ukrainians, are scrambling to flee the country as a result of the Russian invasion. The complaint, in short, is that Ukrainians are being given priority at border crossings. The African Union said reports of Africans being singled out would be, quote, shockingly racist and in breach of international law. Ukrainian authorities, meanwhile, have denied that Ukraine was obstructing foreigners from leaving and stressed they first wanted to release, as they described it, women and children. Some migrants have also said that the accusations of racism are exaggerated, and the problem is the general chaos in the country. Meanwhile, European and UN officials have stressed there should be no discrimination whatsoever between Ukrainians and non-Ukrainians. And as Germany's Foreign Minister Annalena Baerbock emphasized at the special session of the UN General Assembly, every refugee must receive protection no matter their nationality, their origin or the color of their skin.